Well, look, back in 2010, I went bankrupt, right? Imagine 2 weeks before Christmas getting a call from your accountant saying, hey, you have no more money.
He started in a basement with nothing but ambition and built a company that now constructs over 1 million square feet of retail space every year for some of the biggest brands in the world. So today we're going inside the mind of a builder who turned grit into a 9-figure empire. Welcome back to the root of all success. I am the real Jason Duncan, and this is episode number 340. My guest is Anthony Amunategui, a founder and president of a big company called CDO Group. This is a national commercial construction firm that he launched nearly 25 years ago from his basement. And today, as I said earlier, he builds for some of the world's biggest and largest retail brands, completing thousands of projects across the country. Anthony is also the host of his own podcast called the Future Factory Podcast. I was a recent guest on that. Well, maybe we'll talk about that. But he in that show, he explores technologies, ideas, leadership principles that are all shaping tomorrow. So from humble beginnings to a $100 million enterprise and now a platform for big conversations about the future, Anthony knows what it takes to build something that lasts. So Anthony, welcome to the root of all success.
Jason, grateful to be on. It was a lot of fun having you on the podcast the other day, and I hope we have some great conversations today. Thank you.
Well, you went from launching a construction company in your basement to building over 1 million square feet of retail space every single year. So what was the moment that you realized that this thing that you started could actually become something massive?
You know, when we started CDO Group, there was a group of us, right? Some guys that worked at Boston Market, Einstein Bagels together. And the truth was we were building ourselves a job. I mean, look, the beginning of CDO Group was a necessity. You know, imagine being in the construction business in a retail world, right? I had worked for 6 different brands, and I went from doing, you know, you build yourself out of a job. A brand hires you, you come on board, a bunch of warriors, you build a bunch of their stores. They say, hey, we're stop building. And I became, you know, you're kind of this commodity. And I said to myself, no way can I keep doing this as a career or as a lifestyle or to be a father. All that stuff came into play. And I said, look, I can do this for people on an outsourcing basis and provide them that service. And right there in that moment, I realized that's the way I was going to do this. I could do what I loved doing, but I could do it for multiple people. And that way I was not out of a job every couple of years when they stopped building.
Well, take us back to the early days. So what did your household look like when you were growing up, and how did that shape the way that you approach business today?
Well, you know, look, from early on, my father died young. You know, I come from a kind of a rough neighborhood. My mother worked at Denny's. You know, what really drove me was the first time, and I look at, this is here, by the way, there's $10,000 worth of therapy. You know, sitting on the playground where some kid made fun of the holes in my pants. And you know, then I was this little poor kid with curly hair. Imagine me with this little brown, I was really brown and dark, and a big giant afro. And some kid made fun of me. And I probably from that moment on have been trying to prove that I'm not poor. From that playground to today, was maybe one of the things that's driven me to be successful was to prove something. And then probably somewhere along the way, I answered the question and I knew I was successful. And now I do it for a much different reason, which is, we can get into that a little bit later. You know, we're an entrepreneur. What drives them in the beginning maybe starts to convert later on into some stuff that you really want to become and give back in different ways. So I think we can talk about that maybe in some separate conversation.
Well, I think that let's explore that now. I think that the idea that you just dropped is that when we start, typically it's out of necessity. We're just building a job. We just got to make some money, and we're doing it primarily for money. But then it starts to change and money starts to come to us. We start making more money than people around us. We start realizing whatever the American dream might mean to us. And then it shifts, doesn't it? It shifts to pursuing a different purpose rather than just more money. So what is the purpose that you're pursuing now?
Well, you know, imagine those early days was a lot about proving who I was. I wasn't a kid who went to college. I was a kid from the streets, right? This young guy who never graduated college. You know, I always worked. I was always an entrepreneur. And so my early days of being an entrepreneur was about proving who I am, right? I wanted you to see me. I wanted the world to see that I was something substantial. And then you start to build that career, like you talk about, you build that company, you build that, and you start to learn how to do it. Look, my early days, I was literally a street fighter when it came to business. I didn't have the skills or the skill set, but what I did have was relentless behavior. I got up every single morning, every moment of my life, every breath of my day was driven by driving a company, right? I had something to prove, and I spent every waking moment literally building it. And look, for those of you out there that want to be entrepreneurs, don't kid yourself. Look, this is not easier than the job that you have today. If you think that becoming an entrepreneur, somewhere you're going to be rich and famous and go on yachts and hang out, that's all nonsense. Look, to become an entrepreneur is literally relentless behavior. It has to, in order to be successful at anything. All of you young people out there that want to become rich and famous, all my kids are, I want to be influencers. I want to be this. Look, it's nonsense. If you want to do anything, be an influencer or be anything in business, it takes relentless behavior. And I mean, every waking moment, every hour of your day, every breath that you take has got to be about building it, because you're going to find out something. You don't know shit. And I didn't know shit when I started in business. I literally knew nothing. But I just kept trying, and you kept trying, and you kept trying. And that's really what makes it successful. It's not about having some wisdom early. Look, if I went back today with all the knowledge I have today, back then, I'm not even sure that would work. But today, being a young entrepreneur, you get up every morning fighting and gritting, and all of that, not having the money, not having it caused you to be way more thorough. It made you be a lot more efficient with every decision you did. You didn't have the money to have a big team, so you didn't have these big ideas. So everything that you did had to be microly efficient, right? So you had to do a lot more with a lot less than you ever did before.
Construction is a brutal industry, tight margins, constant problems, people who don't deliver. So what made you believe that you could win in a space when so many others fail?
For me, I could see it. Some people like, let me, you ever lean over a pool table and sometimes you can see the shot?
Mm-hmm.
You ever see it? Like literally, sometimes there's literally a line I can see, right? It's like I don't know if it's a beautiful mind kind of craziness thing, but for me, I can see construction like other people can't see it. Like I can literally see that the process that you follow here, if you want an outcome out here, it's never out here is the problem. It's always the process. And for me, my early days in the business, I really believe that most people show up at this business like cowboys, and they don't deserve what happens at the end. For me, it's everything I do in construction is a process. I build a doghouse and a skyscraper with the same process. And if you follow that process, we always turn over on time, on budget. And I can see it, right? For some reason, I've done so many thousands of projects. I can see this process, and that's what we follow here, right? What we follow is a system that when we do what we do, we always get what we get. And it's a commitment. You don't deserve it. Sometimes we pull off projects and they get messy or something happens because we forgot to follow the process. We don't follow the process. We don't deserve the outcome. We may get it. Look, we may get lucky and we can arm wrestle a project down, but you're lucky, not deserving of it. So that's really where, for me, I can see that in the business, and I'm not sure everybody else can do that.
Well, building a national construction firm, of course, as you indicated, you're dealing with a lot of chaos on a daily basis. So if you think back to your 25 years, what's one project or a moment that nearly broke you? And then what did you learn from that?
Well, look, back in 2010, I went bankrupt. Right? Imagine 2 weeks before Christmas getting a call from your accountant saying, "Hey, you have no more money." I'm like, come on. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. Right? Look, as an entrepreneur, I see things with rose-colored lenses, and we just needed one more customer, one more deal. We went from doing 400 projects a year to doing, 40 down to doing 4. Right? And we had this whole team of people that I had to let go of 2 weeks before Christmas. We were at the time, CDO Group was on the 33rd floor of the corner of Michigan Avenue in Chicago and Wacker Drive. We were on the corner of that building. We had this beautiful office, and that's an old school building where the 15th floor windows actually open. Literally, you can open a window, right? Imagine sitting next to an open window thinking jumping was probably the only way out. Now, that was a quick thought that went through my brain. Probably the only time in my life I really had that serious thought. But letting go of all 40 employees I had at the time 2 weeks before Christmas was literally a soul-crushing experience. Now, It does. It does. Through that pain you go through, it really creates a much better leader later on. But in that moment, man, Jason, I was mortified and painful. It was painful just looking in those people's eyes that I had just worked so hard to build.
So what was that like filing that bankruptcy paperwork? What were the emotions that went through you at that time?
Come on, everything goes through you in that moment. Shame, guilt, fear, right? It's all over. The world's ending. All of that it all comes crushing down on your soul in that moment. I had a banker who, we had the same bank for years and years and years, and we had a great reputation. I could buy buildings on my signature. I could fund in projects. It was great. But as the economy crashed back then, we went from, we had one business loan. It was about a $450,000 business loan. And you could see where we started getting late on it, right? We went from 30 days behind to 60 days behind to 90 days behind. We were still making payments, but they were getting behind. And I sat down with the bank, and they called me in. And this is the time when all the banks were refinancing. And this little banker who I'd never dealt with, who came in as a specialist to clean up all the bank's debt, she said to me, "You have to get current today. And if you don't get current today, we're going to foreclose on your loan." And they did. And I said, "Look, if you do that, you're going to force me to bankruptcy." I go, "Look, I've been with a relationship with this bank for how many years?" And in that moment, it wasn't her. It wasn't a relationship thing. It was just what they had to do as an organization to protect themselves, right? So the government was giving them a bailout, and they had to write off all the old debt, or any debt that they had. And that really I was a part of that process. And, at the time I was so resentful. I'm like, why, how could you, what kind of people do this? All the resentment came up, all that stuff, which by the way, hold on to that long enough and you become a cynic old man, right? You become one of those really people that you have to find a way to go, all right, what's my part in this, right? A part of me was I over leveraged myself, right? I wasn't a cash driven company. I was, betting on my future income for my today's problems. And so today I'm a much different company. I'm a cash-based company. I have no debt, right? That process taught me to be a much better leader later on. But in that moment, Jason, it was all of what you say, the deepest, darkest parts of being a human. Like in the moment of that, it was dark and I wanted to run and I wanted to get drunk. And by the way, I end up going through a big drinking problem right after that, right? I really speared on some behaviors to escape those feelings. And today I don't drink, but a lot of that, going through that was really dark and painful. And, all those emotions, wanting to run away from all that pain, came into play.
I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I can only imagine the type of emotional trauma that sparked in your life. But as you look back on that now, that was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So at what point did you finally come out where you could breathe clear again, and the shame and the pain of it was in the rear view?
You go through that. And by the way, in the moment, it's terrible. Standing here 15 years, looking back at it, the best thing that could ever happen to a young entrepreneur, right? You don't know that going through it. You can never connect the dots looking forward, right? But looking backwards from where I am today, I would not be the multi-million-dollar company that we are today without going through what I had to go through at that moment to do that. Look, the humility that it causes you, it really sets you back and really has you start to look at your fundamentals. Now, I'll give you an example. On my desk in my office today, I still have one of the little manuals that we wrote up. At the time we were growing so fast, one of the employees comes in and goes, "Hey, Anthony, in order for us to be a successful company, we need to have an employee handbook, and an employee handbook has to be written by a professional company. You can't just be this redneck company who doesn't have an employee handbook." And we hired some company. We paid them $4,000 to write our company employee manual. We paid another company another $4,000 to print up 100 of these things or whatever it was. I forget what the box is, but I had a bunch of boxes of it. And then 2 weeks later, I had to let everybody go. Now, I keep one of those manuals on my desk. Why? Because it reminds me of what's really important in business, right? When I look at the decision logic of what everybody else wants to come in and tell you, that you have to have this, you have to have this. I look at it and go, no, look, I just made a decision about 15 minutes ago about going to becoming part of an organization, right? Someone came into my office and said, look, we need to be part of this organization. It's a $5,000 entry fee and you have to go through this thing. It's going to cost about 10 grand altogether to do it. And I started looking at it going, all right, let's look at what's the real fundamental here. What do we really need to look at as a business owner? what are we going to get out of that relationship with that organization? Is it just our ego that we get to put our name that we're part of this organization, or are there customers? Are we going to get customers because of that? And when you started really looking at the business decision, I had to make the answer was no, we're not going to do it, because just because my ego has their name on there, I'm not sure that I'm going to get the feedback from my customers to go, hey, look, we're going to use you because of that. When I have other departments going, hey, I'd rather have better employees, or I'd rather have you hire a different person in this group, for me. Those will be places where I can impact those customer relationships much, much better. So, I think there's where you start to learn some of your fundamentals, what's really important, what's the first principles of what business really needs rather than what your ego needs to show the world.
Well, now you host the Future Factory podcast, where you dig into emerging technologies and innovation. So how is technology changing the construction industry right now? And when do you think most companies, or where do you think most companies are getting left behind in all this?
Well, look, this is my favorite topic to talk about. Look, if you're not all in today on AI, you are wasting. You're not going to be here for very long. And today, what we're doing in the AI world, construction people work their asses off, right? Here's what you got to know about construction. Maybe construction and restaurant people are some of the hardest working people in the world, right? We build great buildings. You look around this country and take a look around everything. Look around the office you're at right now. Look around the office. Here, the office I'm in today is this great old factory. Great, strong men and women built this place. They worked their asses off to give us everything we have in our country, and they work really hard. Now, the problem with construction is most of it's been run by chaotic experience. We take heavy shit from over here, we bring it over here, we pound on it, and we all yell at each other, and it's unorganized. People act like cowboys. Today, when you look at even a great project manager of the past, you might be able to go, let's call it 10 layers deep. You as a project manager could hire your subs and their subs and buy out the material and coordinate their schedules and have their deliveries. But so many things change so fast. A schedule on most construction projects an hour after it's built is useless, right? Usually by day 3, you can put it in the porta potty and people can wipe their ass with it, right? Today with AI, we can create schedules that are down to 15-minute increments per person on the job site. Just last year, we turned over $12 million worth of construction in a 2-week period, right? We turned over a whole bunch of Panda Expresses and Raising Canes all on the same week, right? And one of those was my son was running a project down in Lantana, Florida. And I went down there and, we're crunch time. We're trying to get this thing open before Thanksgiving and just crunching it away. And I get down there and realize, hey, we're backed up a little bit. And I need to get the electrician. The electrician's a guy that I know pretty well. I call him up. Hey, listen, Chris, I need some help down here. Chris sends me 18 men the next morning. 18 men. I mean, come on. Here, just imagine 18 electricians on one restaurant project. It's obnoxious, right? Now, thank you, Chris, for all the work that he does. What a great relationship we have together. 18 men show up there. The problem is that the one man that ran it, that got him behind, couldn't handle the conversations with 18 different people. It was too much for that one person who was already behind, right here, a guy who couldn't handle it already. I said to Chris at the end of the day, I go, man, listen, brother, thank you very much for sending me the crew you did. Just a great relationship. But tomorrow I need the same crew, but I need you here. I need your head foreman here. And I'll have my son Joe here and myself here. And the 4 of us can divvy up the 18 men that you send us, and we can get way more functional with them, because, you had 10 men that walked around bumping into each other all day and 8 men that really got some work done. And if we got those other 10 men working, we could in 3 days, we built the entire restaurant, turn that store over on time. It was phenomenal, but it's a great example of how AI and it's going to help us in the future, where we can see things a lot clearer than we ever could as humans. Just the level of complexity for everyone, the deliveries, schedules, updates, communication with teams, just the human capacity is limited. And if you and your organization aren't looking at how AI can communicate with teams and teams of people and systems faster, then you're missing the opportunity there.
Well, CDO Group is now a woman-owned business. So how has that designation shaped your company's trajectory, and what do you want people to understand about building a business with that structure?
Well, let me tell you something. What's been amazing for us is that my wife, Sophia, took over running the day-to-day operations of CDO Group. Now, much different energy than I bring to the table. If you look back at the years that I ran CDO Group, we were very successful. But you look back over the field and there was a lot of dead bodies. I ran a lot like a Spartan war camp, right? I mean that we were very successful, but we ripped through people. We went through. For me, it was all about winning the war. Well, she runs it more like a family. She runs it like an organization. Today we have tenure. We have people who've been here for 20 plus years. People that are we have multiple years of people here, and we're building long-term relationships. For us, the people that we have here are the most important things. She's doubled down on every individual that's here. If you're here in our organization, we want to build you. Now, I'm not telling you we're going to be easy on you. We're going to push you. We're going to grow you. But our whole goal is to build great humans. If we build great humans, they build great companies, and the organization is prospered because of it. We have great human beings that run CDO Group. And I will tell you that Sophia and what she brings to the table is she cares about the human like we never have before. And that has just dramatically changed the people and processes we have here.
All right, we're going to get back to Anthony in just a moment. But first, if you are enjoying these conversations here on the podcast, would you take 30 seconds today to leave a 5-star review? Because it helps more entrepreneurs find this show. It keeps us growing. Whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, tap those stars. Let us know why you listen, because that means a lot more than you know. And now a word from today's sponsor, Dub. If growing a business with personalized video outreach has ever been on your radar, then you need to know about Dub. It's the ultimate video sales platform that I've personally been using since 2018. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I use it nearly every single day. Dub makes it easy to record videos, to send those videos that stand out in a crowded inbox, complete with clickable calls to action so that people who watch those videos can instantly book a call, they can reply, they can take a next step, whatever I want them to do. You get real-time analytics that tell you exactly how your videos perform, helping you tailor your follow-ups more closely and to close deals faster. So whether you want to boost your email engagement or ramp up your social media presence, or if you want to speed up your sales funnel, Dub has the right tools to make that happen without all the complicated software or the lengthy setups. If you want to see how this game-changing platform can work for you, head over to therealjasonduncan.com/dub. That's therealjasonduncan.com/dub. That's spelled D-U-B-B. And you can get started with Dub today at a discount, and you even get a free trial. So take your business communications to the next level with video, emails, and Dub. Now back to Anthony. So you interview on your podcast some incredible minds, tech leaders, authors, innovators. So what's one idea or one conversation that completely shifted the way you think about business or leadership?
When we look at it, what I love about why I do the podcast is because I'm an avid reader. I love reading. I love reading books. I can't consume enough data. For me, running the podcast is that way. It's kind of like the shortstop to reading a book. I get to bring the author on, the idea on there. And what I found lately is that every one of those things really has, if you really look at yourself as a leader, if you don't realize at some point you become the bottleneck of your business. And being able to see that through some of the great coaches I've had on early, some of those people have actually become coaches for me. I had this one great woman who came on and she just really taught me about where I was the bottleneck. And she comes in one day, she goes, "Anthony, today we're going to lock your door," right? And so she comes in my office and she locks the door. She goes, and I'm like, great. I have this open door policy. People come in and out of my office all day long. And I'm okay. Well, what do you want to do? She goes, well, no. We're locking you in. I go, what? She goes, yeah. She goes, you realize that every day you have all these great people and you walk out there and you step on their air hose, right? So you've hired all these great people and you keep going out there and pulling the S out on your chest and you suck all the oxygen out of the room.
Yep.
I go, Lola, I don't mean that. I'm there to coach. No, Anthony, but you don't realize what you're doing is you're taking away why you hired great people, and they don't become great people. They become not so great people, right? Because now they're waiting for you to come with answers. And here's what we're going to do is we're going to give you 6 1-hour meetings a week with 6 people. And I thought, great, here's what I'll do. I'm going to write lists and I'm going to have that meeting. I'm going to give them things to do. And I'm going to do. Now I have meetings with people. I don't talk about business at all. I talk about them. And I find out the great people know exactly what to do. And as you do that, you start to realize that maybe therein lies some of that early part of you as an entrepreneur that you're solving, right? The early days of being an entrepreneur, you really start to notice that you're trying to prove something. And in proving something, you stop others from proving it for themselves, right? And when you step back and let them be the hero and them run your company, our organization today runs with or without me. I just came back from Thailand and spent, 2 weeks gone and didn't have to have one phone call back. It ran just as good without me being here as it does when I'm here, because the people that run this company are phenomenal human beings that all know exactly what to do. And we have meetings. We talk about guidance, and we have leadership meetings where we set up and we do alignment together. But those meetings, when you have great people, happen really quickly. They get it, and then they can move on, and they run with the torch. And today I look at some of the teams that are built here. Some of the leaders that are in this organization run, some of the healthiest, strongest groups of people I've ever seen in my life, and I learn from them, which is something I couldn't have said to you before.
So what's something that you used to believe that you don't believe anymore?
That I have to do it all myself.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
What, the name of this show is The Root of All Success. So I got to ask some success questions. If you look back over your career, last 25 years building your company, what would you say, Anthony, has been the one key that has unlocked success more than anything else?
Jason, I don't know if I can say one. I got to say there's two. Right. Number one is relentless behavior, right? Relentless. And when I mean relentless, if you are not willing to take every breath towards your business, this work-life balance nonsense that people, look, work-life balance will come, right? You will have time for your family. If you have a business and an opportunity, you need to give it every breath. And the people around you need to support that with you. And if you're not going to be successful. If you think that, I can shut off at 5:00 and it's not. There may be some days you have to work all night long. There may be some days you don't get to have lunch. There may be some days where you forget to have dinner, because that's what it's going to take to build it. Now, that also comes with, as you start to grow, you start to build some teams. Now, one of the biggest successes for me was the work I did on my personal growth. Right. I think as a human being, great leaders don't realize they're the bottleneck. And it's really the things that you know about yourself that stop you. Right. So some of that was my thoughts, actions, and behaviors as a human being that were stopping me from growing. Right. So if you look at the way that I ate, the way that I drank, the way that I showed up here today, I practice a really diligent behavior about growing Anthony as the human. Right. And I mean mind, body, and soul. And today, I eat better than I've ever eaten. I work out harder than I've ever worked out. If I work on the people here at CDO Group, myself and others, right, the company becomes healthier. And I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize, is that you have to do as much work on yourself as you do on the organization. And I mean, really start to look at the way that you talk, the way that you act. If the company that you have is caused by your actions and behaviors, how can you take accountability for all of your how can you say that what I'm doing is holding us back, and start to work on those things? And it takes a level that a lot of people aren't willing to go look at. A lot of people want to lie themselves. And I will tell you that as you unwind that and start to really look at your being and the way that you communicate and talk, that's what's really holding us back. And then you go find the mentors and people to train you how to find other ways of being. And that's probably been one of the biggest gifts, is especially for the podcast. One of the reasons why I do it is every one of you guys that come on the podcast give me another chance to take another scoop at myself and learn from each of you guys.
Yeah. How do you personally define that word success?
I was just on vacation, and every morning we had this beautiful house in Thailand, right? We were this big Airbnb, one of the most beautiful houses I've ever stayed in. And I looked out over my breakfast table. Every morning we had breakfast made for us in this beautiful home. And I looked over that table, and I could look at my children and the time I spend with them and the relationship I have with each one of them. I will tell you that in my family life, looking over that table with them and all the things you go through in a great marriage and all the things you go through as a father, in the diligent work that you do to keep a family together. Because as a man, that's my job. My job is to keep this family together. Now, the same thing happens in business, right? When I look over the organization, and we had an outing a month or two back where we put everybody on a bus. We took all the office people. We went down to one of our job sites at Raising Cane's that we're building down in Peoria, Illinois. We took the whole office down there, and as the assistants and the coordinators and the accountants were pushing brooms and cleaning windows and seeing our superintendents, right, as they had the pride to support those other people, right, I looked over that group and thought to myself, man, we're doing something right here. Right. This is what great organizations do, what great people do. They work together to support each other in ways that sometimes, you can't quantify, but that when I'm not in the room, they're doing it when I'm not there as well. Right. So I don't have to sit there and check everybody's, what are they doing every 5 minutes? Hey, what's this guy doing? What's that guy doing? Right. Great people do great work.
By that definition, do you consider yourself successful?
Right now, I think it's something that you're always grateful, never satisfied, right? The work that we do is always grateful for where we are, but don't be satisfied, right? As soon as you get satisfied, you are look, the cannibals are coming for you in our organization every day. Literally, they're cannibals outside of your door coming to eat your face off. And if you remember that about being a business leader, don't get lazy. They're coming for you. Your competition wants what you have. And if you get satisfied somewhere in there, it's just a matter of time before they're going to eat your face off. So be grateful for what you have and don't, it's not from out of a lack, but you're doing it out of the desire to be healthy. Continue to be a healthy leader, right? Do the work, show up, don't get lazy. And then that you'll say, I don't know if satisfied it or the right way, but continue to, work on it.
All right, Anthony, as we get ready to close this show down, this conversation, I got 3 rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Go.
All right. One book that's had the biggest impact on how you lead.
7 Habits of Highly Successful People.
All right. That's a great book. Great book. Everybody should read that. Now, second question. If you could shadow any entrepreneur for a full day, living or dead, who would it be?
I think I got to go Elon Musk. Look, I think he's a phenomenal, one of today's great minds. And just watching, I have multiple companies, and watching other leaders who do that, being able to float through ideas and be in the moment completely with those. I think it'd be interesting to watch Elon Musk do what he does.
And last one, what's one thing most people would be surprised to learn about you?
That I'm a pretty emotional guy. That it was surprise. I think a lot of people know that about me. So let's see, surprised to know about me. What would be surprised to know about me? I haven't drank in 9.5 years.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, probably the best thing ever happened.
Well, Anthony, congratulations on your success. And I also congratulate you specifically, because we talked about it earlier in the podcast, of coming through bankruptcy better, stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to be the man that you needed to be to take your company to the level that it is today. Congratulations on going through all that and being here to tell your story about it today.
Jason, thanks for letting me be on the podcast. I'm so grateful for you, and it's just an honor to be on this podcast with you. Thank you for having me on, brother.
All right. I want everybody, obviously you're a podcast listener, you wouldn't be listening to this show. So go check out his podcast at futurefactorypodcast.com. That's Anthony Amunategui, who's been my guest today on the show. And you'll find me as a guest on his show there. Anthony, any other ways you want people to reach out and get in touch with you or connect?
You can get me anytime at Anthony@CDOGroup.com and the Future Factory podcast. But both of those are great places to get me. Or on LinkedIn as well.
All right. Well, thanks again, Anthony, for being on the show.
Thanks.
All right. You know what time it is. It's time for another edition of JD's Public Service Rants. This is where I call out the little things that shouldn't have to be said, but clearly they do. So if you're guilty of this one, well, consider yourself officially put on notice. Let's talk about oversharers on airplanes. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. They start off casual. Hey, where are you headed? And then 30 seconds later, you're deep in a story about their third divorce, their childhood trauma, or how they just found out that their business partner is sleeping with their ex. And it's all delivered at full volume, full conversational volume, like everyone within a 3-row radius is dying to hear it. Newsflash, we're not your therapist. We're not your podcast audience. We're not your group chat. We're just trying to survive this flight with our sanity intact. Maybe read a book, watch a movie. Let your seatmate choose whether they want to engage instead of trapping them in your personal soap opera. It's a flight. It's not a confessional booth, people. Well, that's it for today's JD's Public Service Rant. If you've got an idea for one of these, send it my way. And in the meantime, don't be that guy. All right, there you have it, listeners. Another amazing story. And I tell you what, if you've listened to this show over a long period of time, you know that when a guest starts talking about bankruptcy, I usually key in on that because I don't think those stories are told publicly enough because there's such shame around it. It's usually 7 to 10 years of lingering problems that happen as a result of it. And everybody's scared to death of it. And, look, it's not fun to go through, as Anthony pointed out. It's not anything any of us want to have to endure. But I think demystifying it and understanding that you can, because some of you may be actually sitting in that place right now where you're having to make that decision. I've got a very good friend who told me about 3 weeks ago he was about ready to sign the papers at the end of the year. I haven't talked to him since New Year's, so I don't know what the status is, but I'm telling you, this is something that we need to hear from people who've built 9-figure empires like Anthony, that you can survive it. It's gonna suck. He even got into some bad habits that he had to kick with alcohol, but he made it through, and you can too. So thank you for listening to the show today. Thank you for tuning in like you always do. But I'm going to be talking to another person like this now in the next episode. So make sure you tune in and listen to that. But as always, I am your host, the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Attention business owners.
Attention business owners.
Feeling burnout from running your business? Uncertain if you're nearing burnout? Take our free 10-question business burnout test at businessburnouttest.com to discover where you stand. With just 10 quick questions, you'll learn how to immediately begin making changes to regain freedom and success. Cut your daily operations time in half. Improve your quality of life and prepare your business for your future exit without losing revenue or profit. Visit businessburnouttest.com now and take the test. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.